So, hello everyone, and welcome to our marketing Synaptic. And this webinar is co-organized and co-hosted by Synaptic and Epitiro. We are so happy. I see so many people joining us. So happy to have you here. Maybe we can wait for 2 more minutes so more people can join us, and we're gonna start our webinar. I think we are ready to start our webinar. So welcome again. Like I said, this session is co-organized and co-hosted by Synaptic and Epitiro. We are so happy to have you here joining us for this practical session. It's going to be focused to answer a question that we regularly hear from telecom regulators at how they can benchmark fixed broadband quality of service affordably with full control and, of course, independently. Today's session is going to be introduced by our data scientist, Salwash Lady. She's here with us. And Des Owens, who is a co-founder of Epitiro. Just before we begin, I want to share with you a few guidelines. Of course, this session is going to be recorded, so we can share the recording with you after. We can share the recording with you after, and with all the registrants that couldn't join us today. Your questions are so welcome. You can leave them at any time during the session in the Q&A box. We will try to answer them right away or at the end of the session. And please keep your microphone and camera off so we can avoid noises. So as I mentioned, this session is co-hosted by Epitiro. Epitiro is a broadband performance monitoring specialist. Their cloud-based plug-and-go agents platform can give telecom regulators continuous and independently verified quality of service and quality of experience data across ADSL, Wi-Fi, and FTTH. Of course, with a no in-country infrastructure, and you don't need a specialist team. Their solution is already operational at some regulator, like the Botswana Communication Regulatory Authority and the Telecommunication Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, and also more regulators. Synaptic is, at the other hand, offer a suite of telecom and analytics solutions for telecom regulators and telecom operators. We offer AI and machine learning powered fraud data detection that helps solve use cases on the Wangiri, the Sandbox, and the CLI. We offer data verification and revenue auditing solution for telecom regulators. We also have solutions that help enforce and monitor in real-time quality of service standards and mobile money monitoring. So I think without more delay, we'll hand over to Des and Selwa, who will guide us through today's session. The start is going to be with our data scientist, Selwa, who will guide us through some of the challenges that telecom regulators might face when it comes to quality of experience when broadband benchmarking. Selwa, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Salwa. So to start, I'm going to talk about QoS and QoE reports and why they matter for telecom regulators and why getting them right is harder than it sounds. Regulators have a core responsibility to verify that operators are actually delivering the service they promised, not just on paper, but in practice for real users. QoS and QoE reports serve three purposes that are all essential. First, they create a compliance framework. When all operators are measured with the same indicators and the same method, the regulator can clearly see who is performing well and who is not, and that is fair benchmarking. Second, they help identify where the service is failing, which areas are underserved, which users are not receiving what they subscribe to. That is the foundation for consumer protection and investment decisions. Third, they give regulators the evidence they need to act, to respond to complaints, to justify decisions to government and vendors, and to support digital inclusion policy. So in simple words, these reports help regulators answer three questions. Are operators respecting their commitments? Are users actually receiving a good service? And where do we need to improve? Before going further, we need to be precise about what we mean by QoS and QoE, because they are often used interchangeably, but they are not the same thing. QoS is quality of service, and it is the technical view of the network. It measures the same fundamental indicators everyone knows: availability, throughput, latency, jitter, packet loss, etc. These indicators tell engineers and regulators whether the network is performing according to its specifications. QoE is quality of experience. Uses the same indicators, but asks a different question about where and how they are measured. Not what does the network report from inside its own system, but what do users actually receive at their end of the connection. Can they browse reliably? Can they stream without interruption? Can they make a video call from their home, etc.? So QoS is network-focused, while QoE is user-focused. The KPIs here can be identical. The difference is the measurement point and the perspective. So QoS and QoE are strongly connected. Good QoS usually supports good QoE, but good QoS does not guarantee a good QoE. The same throughput or latency figure looks very different depending on whether it is measured inside the operator's core network or at the user's terminal, after traveling through the access line, the home gateway, and the Wi-Fi environment. So this distinction is important because it means that monitoring only the network side is not enough. You also need to measure from the user side to capture what citizens actually receive. So how does QoS reporting work today in most regulatory frameworks? The process is well established. The regulator defines the indicators and the reporting obligations. Operators then collect performance data from their own network system and submit periodic reports. These reports can be monthly, quarterly, or annually, depending on the framework. The regulator reviews the KPIs, checks compliance with the license thresholds, and in some cases, performs audits or field tests. Results may then be published as market reports or operator comparisons. So this process is important. It provides a formal, structured compliance framework, and it creates accountability. But it also has a fundamental limitation. It depends almost entirely on data that operators produce themselves from inside their own network, and that means it may not show the quality that users actually experience. So let's be specific about these limitations, because there are several and they matter. So the first and most fundamental is where the measurement happens. Operators measure the same KPIs, throughput, latency, availability, but they do so from inside their own network. That gives a view of how the network performs internally, not necessarily what the user receives after the signal has traveled through the access line and the last mile infrastructure. So the measurement point is too far from the user. The second follows directly from this. Operator measurements often do not capture the full end-to-end path. The service passes through many elements the operator does not always monitor: local infrastructure, customer equipment, etc. So quality can degrade in these segments without appearing in any operator report. Third, there is reported data does not always show whether users can access the promised service in real conditions. A coverage map may look acceptable nationally, while quality in specific neighborhoods or homes is poor. Fourth, national averages. National averages hide local and regional gaps. A signal or a single figure can look good while masking serious underperformance in certain areas. Fifth, periodic or aggregated reports may not show peak hour degradation. What actually happens in the evening when many users are connected at the same time. Sixth, since the data comes from the operators themselves, the regulator may struggle to independently verify it. Seventh, measurement method may differ across operators which makes fair comparison difficult. And eight, periodic reports are by definition not real-time, so issues can develop and persist for weeks before they appear in a report. So the key message here is operator-reported QoS data is necessary, but it is not sufficient. The KPIs are the right ones. The problem is that they are measured at the wrong point. Regulators need the same indicators measured independently from the user side. Now let's look at exactly where broadband quality can break down, because this helps explain why a good-looking KPI does not always mean a good user experience. Broadband service is delivered through multiple layers, and the problem can originate at different points depending on the access technology. With EDSL, performance is strongly constrained by the physical copper line. Download and upload speeds are asymmetric. Download is always much higher than upload, and today upload matters for remote work, for video calls, for cloud applications, etc. So all of this depends on upload quality. Beyond that, the distance from the exchange, the quality of the cable, and line attenuation all reduce the actual speed the user receives. So a network indicator can look acceptable while the user is experiencing something different. With FTTH, the situation is better. Fiber has far greater capacity, but having a fiber access line does not automatically guarantee good end-to-end service. Routing, pairing arrangements, aggregation points, and peak hour congestion can all limit delivered performance. So the infrastructure may not consistently support the subscribed service level in real conditions. And then there is Wi-Fi, the final segment inside the home. Even when the operator's access network is working well, the home gateway can become the bottleneck. Outdated or low-quality boxes can limit accessible performance. The key message is broadband quality must be understood end-to-end. A KPI can look good at one point in the network, while the user receives poor service because the problem is somewhere else entirely, in the access line, the transport network, or the terminal. So after seeing where quality can fail, we can now name the gap clearly. From the operator side, quality is described in terms of network availability, core throughput figures, reported coverage areas, etc. These are useful indicators. They show whether the network is functioning and whether technical obligations are being met. But from the user side, the questions are completely different. The user does not ask about core network throughput. The user asks, can my device access the service I subscribe to? Is the connection stable from where I am? Does it degrade every evening? Is the speed I am getting close to what I'm paying for? And if something goes wrong, what is it? Is it my access line, the network, my home box, my device? So the last question is what matters for regulators, because to act on a problem, you first need to know where the problem is. And this is exactly what traditional operator reporting cannot answer. And this is why an independent user-side measurement approach is needed. So now I will hand it off to Des from Epitiro, who will now present their independent measurement solution.
Okay, thank you, Salwa. Let me share my my slides here. Right. Thank you again. It's a pleasure to meet all of you.
In the meantime, we have some questions that we may answer at the end of the session. But now I think this can go on with his parts. This.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to join us today. I'm Des Owens. I'm one of the founders of Epitiro. We've been providing our solution to internet service providers and regulators for about 5 years now. And we've recently seen an increase in interest from a number of international markets as I guess governments and regulators understand the importance of investing in their broadband services to help drive their economy. So I'm happy to be here today. So let's take a look at what the options are for a regulator. If you're looking at how do I get my arms around this, network benchmarking, understand, the performance of my network. As we touched on, the first thing the operator or the regulator may do is ask the internet service providers to provide them with some data. That's a little like asking a student perhaps to grade their own homework. It doesn't always create the same objective methods. And of course, the person providing the data, in this case, the ISP or the internet service provider, they have an interest in giving themselves the best grade and making their data look, as best as you can. So from a regulator perspective, you have limited control. You'll often have inconsistent methodology and sampling, and you do have a conflict of interest. The ISP does not like to report bad news. The other option is to go to a commercial crowdsourced provider. There's a couple of well-established companies. They're in the business of selling the data that they collect. In fact, they don't actually sell the data. What they typically do is they sell the regulator a very limited license to use their data. And this approach comes with significant trade-offs. The data is often quite limited in its scope and its method. The regulator doesn't always have a lot of confidence in the consistency of the statistical sampling. How is it consistent across time, across population sets, and across different devices? And typically the data has a built-in, what we often refer to as a survivor bias. You don't know how many tests were attempted and failed. You don't know how many people tried to run, say, a speed test with an app and it simply couldn't connect. That data is never captured or rarely captured. And so what you get is, a misaligned set of data, typically from the crowdsourced providers. It can have its uses, but to rely on it solely can be very limiting. And there is a genuine misalignment of goals between a commercial company that wants to publish results, rank users, and sell licenses to the data. So, the last option is that the regulator looks to manage their own program. And obviously in that scenario, they have full control. They can apply a consistent method, and if they need to adapt that method, they can do so. And there should be full trust and aligned goals. Historically, the barrier to a regulator doing that was at least twofold. There was cost and the technical expertise that might be necessary to deal with all of the technical questions. Exactly how should one count the bits and the bytes, and what statistical methodology should be applied? The approach we're taking effectively removes those key barriers. So just a quick recap of the Epitiro solution. Because it's cloud-based, there's no in-country IT infrastructure that you're required to purchase and maintain and scale and operate. The agents, as Salwa mentioned, they connect to the network just like an end user. They are, in fact, an end user device. So therefore, they're measuring the end-to-end services. So the test that you're executing originates in the client, connects over the network, and goes to whichever endpoint service you're looking to measure. So you're getting the full end-to-end measurement. Because it's cloud hosted, we as Epitiro and with our partners Synaptique, we can provide a lot of remote support and expertise. We can help you get set up. We can advise on the test methods, and we can keep an eye on the data and help you, and help provide that data. And the last point is, Epitiro does not market or monetize your measurements. Our goal is to give you the tools and the methods and the access to collect and benchmark your own results. So where it's quite straightforward is, our platform, all you need is an Epitiro cloud account and a web browser. And that web browser could be on, any type, on any laptop, computer, or even phone. And a series of our simple plug and play agents. And this scales to support hundreds or thousands of test agents without any extra hardware deployment. A question you might have is, what do you test to? And in some cases, and we can work with you on this. We do this with some of our customers. They may want to commission a server at the internet exchange for the ISP and test to that point. At the same time, they might want to test beyond that to some of the services that the end users consume. So we can set up the tests. We can help you if you need or want to require your ISP to commission an endpoint server so that you can test to the internet gateway, among the other tests that you might include. Just a quick, now I'll provide a quick focus on the agents, because these are probably the only things that you would need to touch in deploying a solution. Or, you know, on the left-hand side are some technical sort of information or characteristics, and on the right are some of the key operational characteristics. This is a low-cost, easily deployed solution. We currently have quite a few hundred of them in Africa, in a couple of different countries and deployments. For the technically minded who want to know, they are at base, they're a Raspberry Pi Compute Module 4. It runs a fully supported Ubuntu Linux distribution. So why that's important is security. It's a fully supported distribution, so it has all the latest patches and security capabilities built into it, and we can remotely update that, and it updates itself as new releases are available. Also, the agent does have a firewall on it for extra security. Technically, it has a 1 gigabit Ethernet interface, and it has a Wi-Fi 7 radio in it. In this case, it's an Intel BE200. What that means is you can confidently deploy that knowing whichever version of Wi-Fi your customers have, this will connect and successfully work because it's backward compatible. So, possibly very few people at this stage have got Wi-Fi 7 deployed. Some of them are still on 5, and some of them are even on earlier versions using the 2.4 gigahertz. And they will all connect, and you will know, what network interface you're talking to. Commercially, the characteristics are simple. If you do have power over Ethernet, which you may have in some of your facilities, it's typically not common in residences, but maybe in schools or enterprises, all you need to do is plug in the the Ethernet, and the device powers on, connects, and you're good to go. A typical scenario where you don't have PoE, you may just have regular Ethernet, you'd plug it in, and then you power the device. And the device power is a simple USB-C, just like a phone, an iPhone or an Android phone. It connects to your network just like any other device. An important fact is this device would have, in the same way your laptop or your phone does not have visibility of other network traffic, this does not have visibility of other network traffic. So, residents and others who might deploy these in their home can be confident that, it's not a device that's intercepting any of that traffic. It is completely secure end-to-end communications. It's encrypted. The moment you register one of these to your account, there's an exchange of TLS certificates. And from that point forward, everything is end-to-end encrypted, and it's all remotely controlled. So that's a little bit about the device, in case, because sometimes customers worry about what is this thing that I'm plugging in.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
We had previously a question about what tools are commonly used to measure broadband performance. I guess, and I hope that your previous slide was an answer to that question. And does you have any other thing you want to add to the question? And we also have another question that asks, at what point does Epitiro normally connect to the licensed network? And how many agents are needed for the best results in terms of quality of experience measurements?
Okay, those are good questions. So a common asked question is, how many measurements should I take? And there's no simple answer, but sometimes it's not as many as you might think. typically it's like you sample the network, and any sampling theory will tend to show you, if you, for example, if I were to take a measurement of an Ethernet, and the service provider, I think I'm purchasing 100 megabits throughput up and down. If I measured that, 5 or 6 times in a day, and every time it came in at exactly 100 megabits per second with very little variation, then statistically I can present that data with what's often referred to as a confidence interval. And I can say with 95+% confidence statistically that I am getting 100 megabits per second. If, however, I took 5 or 6 measurements over time and the results were all over they were very variable, and sometimes I get 40 and sometimes I get 60 and sometimes I get 100, then in order to present the data statistically correctly and with confidence, with a certain confidence interval, I would be required to take more samples because I've got more variation in my performance. So, I mean, that's a kind of mathematical or statistics-based answer to the question. What we typically do is we set these devices. So you'll see here an example of a city with a number of deployments. These would typically be taking 1 or 2 sort of performance measurements, speed tests, and some others every hour. So we're sampling it. The tests themselves, most of the common speed tests, the commercial ones like FAST and MLab and Ookla, do about a 15 to 20 second test on the uplink and then 15 to 20 seconds on the downlink. With some of our deployments, we have specific payloads where we transfer a 100 megabit file over HTTP. And again, with 100 megabit bandwidth, that's a relatively short test. We would typically get a sample of a couple an hour. And if those results were consistent, then you can report with confidence that at this location, you are getting 100 megabits per second with a 99% or 95% confidence interval. So does that help? Does that answer the question? Okay, feel free to add more questions to the chat, and I'm happy to to try and answer them. What tools are used?
I think that was a great answer. And of course, if you have any more questions, they can just leave them at the Q&A.
Yes, yeah. So, okay, so one of the things that makes this quite easy to deploy, this is just a view of a system where we have quite a few at this moment in a particular location. And they're all online if they're connected, and we can instantaneously stop them, start them, send test commands to them, either individually or as a group, 100 at a time, or however you want to configure it. And I'll show you, some of the things we can do there. So if we just now dig into, well, when we say a test, what do we mean? What we have built into the system is a sort of whole library of user-selected tests. And, some of the technical folks in the crowd might recognize these. They may look at it and go, oh, I know what an iPerf test is, and some of them are the commercial speed tests like MLab by Google. Ookla is a commonly used speed test. FAST is one that's used a lot. It's hosted by Netflix, and it goes to their content server. So there's a number of speed tests. You can set up a custom HTTP tests and FTP tests, so different protocols. You can set up UDP, which is a different streaming protocol. So all these tests are configurable, through our system. You go in, you click on it, you select the IP addresses that you want to ping to. In fact, you can specify a server to connect to, the IP address to ping, the DNS to resolve, or even a port range to scan. And these are all configured on a kind of per test basis. And then when you've configured your tests, once you've decided what you want to measure and when you want to measure it, we typically would build, or you can build, or we can build it for you, a test sequence that says, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to measure my Ethernet, and I'd like to run a speed test here, and I'd like to ping these servers and check these destinations, and maybe see how long it takes to resolve a DNS query. And then maybe then I'll wait. I'll do that 2 or 3 times an hour. Or I might then move to a Wi-Fi network, and I'll end the connection on Ethernet, move to Wi-Fi, test I can connect, test how long it takes to connect, and build myself a test schedule. And once you've built that test schedule, you can assign it to a whole group of agents. And once the agents are testing, you start getting data into your system, and you can see the data coming in real time. Typically, a test takes about, in fact, if I go back, you may see, down here is just the bottom with these little green pills. That's the list or the history of the tests as they execute and come in. And you can, if you look closely, you can kind of see, oh, I did a YouTube test at 10:48 and it was successful. And, here's the quick summary. And then a minute or 2 later, I executed a test to Dropbox application. And so you see the tests come in every 30, 40 seconds if you're running a test schedule. And there's numerous ways to visualize that data. And I can show you this in real time. There's lots of tools here. You can drill into the data and look at the detail, or you can pan out and look at the average and the aggregates. What a lot of our customers like to do is they'll build and share custom dashboards so if you were a regulator or you had stakeholders, the service providers, you could say, well, I'd like to share certain data, maybe just high-level summaries or some real-time live performance data. And in our product, you can simply start building these canvases, and then you share them. You share a URL, and anybody who has access to that URL can see, the live performance data. And beyond, if you weren't interested in or generating whole dashboards, you can embed charts and elements into your regular websites. So we have customers that publish charts and scores and results in their homepage, and they are simply linked elements into our product, and the product generates the chart and a little line of HTML, usually in the form of what's called an iframe, and you can drop that into your website, and you can have live performance charts.
Sorry to interrupt again. I just saw that one of our attendees had raised his hand. I just want to remind him that he can ask his question in the Q&A box.
Sure. Okay. There's a question in that. At what point does Epitiro normally connect to the licensee network, and how many agents are needed? Okay, I think I touched on that a little. How many agents? That's there's no simple answer to that. It kind of depends. We've got a few regulators in some smaller populations or some small territories. So, for example, we've got one on a Caribbean island. It's not a big island and it's not densely populated. And I think they've just got 20, 25 agents that they tend to move around. We have a larger, more customer who has deployed hundreds, and they are moving them around different cities, and they, sampling I think they have 3 different internet service providers, and they want to organize, essentially campaigns. So they don't permanently deploy them. They will run a month-long, typically say a month-long measurement campaign, where they'll get a lot of data and they'll get a lot of samples, and then they'll use that to compare or to assess, how their broadband deployments are going by operator and by service level. So if you have a 10 megabit subscription, then, are you getting 10 megabits? If you're paying for 100 meg, is that what you're getting? And, as I think Salwa mentioned, an important thing, particularly in a lot of markets where you have ADSL, where the internet is provided over an asymmetric service, the technology is typically DOCSIS, you will have sometimes 10 or more times the bandwidth on the downlink than you have on the uplink. And those legacy networks, of which there are many, because it's evolved from telephony networks and cable networks, they often have a few more challenges than you would see on a symmetrical fiber network, where the uplink and the downlink usually are balanced and they both have high capacity. But so just with wrapping up quickly on the product, you can set up, or we can set up for you, a custom alerts and notifications. So for example, if you say, I'm expecting 100 megabits up and 100 megabits down, you can, configure a KPI. And when that KPI isn't met, it drops significantly below 100 megs, then you can have the system send emails and notifications to subscribers, just letting them know, hey, service has dropped. You might want to look into this. There's a bunch of automated reporting capability built into the platform. Every day, every agent automatically produces an Excel file with every test measurement, summary result, and it stores it in the cloud. So if you wanted to go back and say, well, oh, that agent 2 weeks ago, can I have a look at a summary of all the data? It's all available for you. So we can take a lot of the work out of not just collecting the data, but processing the data and delivering the reports for you. And then if you want deep integration, which some of our larger customers do, the product has a full, what's called REST API. And we've documented it all. You can even go into your own account and generate an API key. And if you have technical resources and software people, it's very easy to interact with our product at a deep integration level. Most of our customers, don't necessarily have those resources available, but if they do, we can integrate. And maybe, what I would say is, remember, because all this is in the cloud, we're able to provide you, significant remote support. We do this for a lot of our customers. We can configure their accounts. We can do some technical troubleshooting for them. We can see the agents that are online. We have a good chunk in with Bokra in Botswana, and so when they've got them online in Gaborone, we can help them troubleshoot. We can see what they can see. We can do the analysis. We can help you build reports, and we can offer advice and guidance on a program. And so and we can do that. We're happy we can do that with our partners, with Synaptique. They can provide local time zone support and local language support, and we can do a lot of the work on the back end to help, get your project moving. So that's what I had from I was going to give you a very quick demonstration of, if I can manage the share.
Sorry, before we go on to the demonstration, we have a question here that says, could you please explain the methodology used to benchmark operators and establish a quality of experience KPI target values? For example, how are target thresholds determined for key performance indicators such as latency, jitter, web page load time, and other quality of experience metrics?
Yes, good. That's a good question. So the methodology falls into a few different areas. So the first question is sort of at the highest level. I usually start by suggesting, okay, what matters to your customers, and what matters is the network available? So there's, you know, the sort of the words we use as a customer is, you know, is it available? Can I get on it? Is it available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or is it only sometimes available? So that's an important kind of KPI, you know, that you want to benchmark, because you can have a super fast network, but if it's never available, you know, it's not much use. So there's, is it available? i.e., can I see the network? Then are the services accessible? Just because I can get on the network, can I get the services I'm interested in? So often you will see, you know, if you have a Wi-Fi network, a device may connect and it's on the radio, but it isn't resolving the DNS, or it's not getting an IP address, so there's no service available. And so you want availability, accessibility, you know, and then when I am on the network, how well does it perform? And how well does it perform? The metrics most people use are speed-based ones, which are, you know, what is my throughput, and typically what is my latency and packet loss. But latency and packet loss will result in, you know, will be a function of throughput. If you have high packet loss or you have high latency, then, you know, TCP protocol will sort of ratchet back a little, and you will sometimes then get slower throughput speeds. But throughput speeds are generally recognized as a useful indicator, but they're not the only one. And without some of the others, you know, they can be misleading, because if someone says I've got a gigabit high-speed network, but it's rarely available and there's a load of packet loss, then you're not going to realize that. Or you might have a gigabit in the local part of your network, but if there's a bottleneck, you know, at another point in the gateway, and you're trying to access a popular service, then that popular service could be really, really slow. One thing we see in a lot of locations, and this is particularly true for remote locations, remember the internet is a shared resource. You know, you may have a dedicated, if you're lucky, you may have a dedicated fiber to your property, but behind that fiber is a bunch of switches and a bunch of gateways and more shared resource. And so what often happens in busy populated locations, you know, the internet performance is really good in the night when everybody's sleeping, and you sample it and you get, you know, very good speeds. And then in the evenings, typically when everybody's using the internet, particularly if you know, if streaming video is a popular service, then even if you've got your connection, your local connection's good, the service you're receiving can be really poor because everybody's consuming it and there's not enough capacity. And, you know, we see that frequently. The capacity bottlenecks can sometimes be at something as simple as a DNS server. Yeah. And, you know, so we have the tools in the system. You know, we've got things like, I know how technical the audience are, it's probably quite varied. You can run things like trace routes, and you can see where is my, you know, where are my packets traveling over the network, and where are they getting dropped, at which nodes and at which junctions in the network am I experiencing the problem. So, you know, some of that is sort of a level of expertise that you may or may not have available to you, but with our help, you can get it, because we can run those tests for you. We can offer some guidance, and we can help you triage, the problems. Does that help? I mean, as I say, if there are some follow-up questions or I didn't fully answer them,
yes, we have a lot of interesting questions coming up here. I see another question that says some of the ESP has fair usage policy. How is it accounted?
Yeah, another good question. Usually, I think by fair usage policy, maybe I need to make sure I understand what that means. What typically the regulators want to check, among other things, is if my subscribers are being told or they're paying for 20 megabits per second or 50 or 100, is that what they're getting? And, that's typically where a lot of complaints are. A customer will pay for, they think they're paying for the upgraded service and they're expecting 100 megabits, and yet they complain that what they're experiencing does not feel like or does not look like 100 megabits. And we, with a lot of our testing, we specifically organize the data by, and they ask that the customer, they want to know what the customer's plan is, because if you're only paying for 10 megabits per second, then, that's what should be at least what's delivered. If you're paying for 100, then you should be receiving 100. So those are, I don't know if that's, exactly what, the question was there, but I'm happy to follow up afterwards.
Yeah, sure. If I just want to announce that, like, if you guys have any follow-up questions, even after the webinar, this website will be happy to answer that. Just send an email and we will be happy to do a follow-up. I see another question that can be also interesting in this.
Yes.
Someone asked, where will the agent be located, and at the operator or other areas?
So that's again, that's the agents can be located almost sort of anywhere reasonably. What we have typically, what happens is the operator, as they get going, they will start by sort of deploying a few amongst their staff, just so that they can become familiar with with it. And then they'll sometimes, in some cases, they've asked for volunteers from their population set, and sometimes those volunteers are they ask the carrier or the ISPs to so I'm just trying to share my screen. Can you see this? Okay, stop that one. So sometimes and then often we find they'll put them in key places like schools. We've got quite a few deployments in schools. There we go. I'm going to just try and share this. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, it's visible. We can see it.
Okay. So so to answer the question, the devices can go anywhere there's typically an Ethernet or an internet connection. And the typical places, that a lot of regulators are focused on are, they're keen to know where the broadband works in certain locations like public schools, where often the government is paying for or subsidizing the service, in libraries and key venues. And then also they're interested in what service their citizens are getting when they're paying for the service across different locations and districts or cities. So pretty much you can put them anywhere. Right. So I'll just do a quick view. You guys can see this is a view of our product, and I'm not going to go into great detail because it would take too long, but I just wanted to give you a quick side of view of how easy it is. We've got built-in help, and it's sort of context sensitive. If you move around, the help moves with you, and we've got a whole bunch of capabilities here. But it's as easy, this is an account where we've got a few agents, located in our office and home that we can use for demo purposes. Oops, sorry, because I haven't used it, it logged me out. I'll go straight back in. Come on. And obviously you could, as a user, you can have access to multiple accounts if that was necessary. Right, so we've got a few agents here scattered around. This is near Washington, DC. And if I pick one at random to have a look at, we'll take this one here. Now I'm talking directly to the agent. As you can see, it's fetching the data in real time from the cloud. What is this agent doing? And this speaks to the question about how you measure or this one, for example, connects to a Wi-Fi network. It does a quick ping of Google. It runs a speed test. It runs a browser test, and then it runs a Dropbox, which is an HTTP transfer. It waits for 15 minutes. It connects to another Wi-Fi network, runs a similar set of tests, waits for 15 minutes, and then connects to Ethernet and runs the tests, does a Wi-Fi scan. And so it does it goes to 3 different networks and it measures them. And it's about 45 minutes between each test cycle. This one has run 1,616 times since it was last stopped. And as you can see, it's actually working as we speak. It is running an Ookla speed test. So it's at this part of the test cycle, it's on Ethernet, and it's just on a ping test, and it's now executing the Ookla speed test. And if we were to wait about 20-30 seconds, that test result would come in. All the test results are, that's the test result. It's just come in, 77 megabits per second. If I click on it, I can see all the detail of which server, how many bits got transferred, lots of kind of low-level technical data. But you can see it's very easy to visualize the data. This is the pattern that you're seeing from that control. It says go to Ethernet for 15 minutes, do some tests, go to this Wi-Fi network, then this Wi-Fi network. And all the data is available for you at your fingertips. You can you can look at different different data in different ways. And I won't go into lots of detail about all the features. I just wanted to quickly show you how easy it is to interact with the devices and how much useful information is immediately available to you when you're running these tests. So I will pause there, and I will hand you back maybe to Salwa, because I think I may have talked too much. So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Des. I just want to say that, unfortunately, we couldn't do a full demonstration of the Epitiro platform here, but you can confirm that we can schedule one-to-one demonstration if they need to know more about the platform.
Yes. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
If you want a full demonstration, you can just come up and we can schedule a detailed one. Before we move on to sales parts, we have a poll, just 3 questions. It's gonna take 3 minutes from you guys, 1 minute per question. The answers will help us to send you resources that are relevant to your need. So we will go through them question by question. I'm going to share the first question that says, does your authority currently have an independent fixed broadband quality of service or quality of experience monitoring program in place? Do you have it fully operational, partially? You have a project plan, or you don't have it? You will have 1 minute to answer the question so we can move to the next one. Let's move to question 2. The question asks if you have a monitoring project planned or underway, and what's your expected timeline for the projects? Also, you have 1 minute to answer so we can move to the last question. And the last question, what is the biggest obstacle to deploying independent broadband monitoring at your authority? Does it include budget, lack of technical capacity, regulatory mandates, or political infrastructure deployment, or any other obstacles you may have? Thank you so much. Thank you for your responses. They are going to be so helpful, and we will make sure to do a follow-up with resources that can be relevant to your specific situation. I think now I'm going to hand over back to Salwa, who will take us through a walk through the Synaptique data analytic library before we do our close-up.
Thank you, Dan. So what that's presented is the measurement foundation from Epitiro. Measured independently and from a point much closer to the user. So this foundation is essential, but for a regulator, measurement alone is not enough. So once you have this data, you need a system to make it actionable. You need to be able to benchmark operators against each other and against their license obligations. You need to map underserved areas, not just nationally, but at the region, city, or neighborhood level. You need to detect whether degradation is temporary, recurring, or structural. You need to audit compliance, verify consumer complaints with objective evidence, and produce reliable reports for governments and vendors. So that is the role of Synaptique. We build the intelligence layer on top of Epitiro's measurement data. Let me show you how this works in practice. So at the top of the architecture are the Epitiro measurement agents. So they continuously collect independent measurements across operators, regions, technologies, etc. So this is what gives the regulator visibility into what is actually happening on the user side. This data then enter our ingestion layer. And this ingestion layer store what arrives, validate it, and normalize it, and maybe enriches the data with contextual information. The processed data is then stored in an open lakehouse platform, and this is where raw and processed data are governed with open analytics access and no vendor lock-in. This is important. So the regulator retains long-term control over the data. So on top of that sits the analytics and intelligence layer, where KPIs are calculated, operators are benchmarked, anomalies are detected, trends are analyzed, etc. So the final output is what the regulator actually uses. We output dashboards, compliance reports, alerts, etc. So here the value is not just data storage, it is the transformation of these measurements into intelligence that the regulators can act on. So one question that regulators actually often ask about a platform like this is, what happens if we want to change tools or change providers or change deployment model? Are we locked in? Can we add other solutions or not? So the answer with Synaptique is no. So the platform is built on a fully open source architecture. That means no license fees, no proprietary data formats, no dependency on a single vendor. The regulator owns the data and retains full control over it. And the deployment can be in cloud or on-premise, depending on the regulator's need. And across the full stack, we use open established technologies. So the key point here is you are not buying a black box, you are building a governed, open, scalable data infrastructure that belongs to you and that can evolve as your needs change over time. So now let's look at how this translates into regulatory decision-making. The central question this dashboard answers is, which operators are consistently underperforming? Where it is happening? When does it happen? And compared to what obligation or market baseline? So at the top, the regulator can filter the view by operator, region, city, access technology, etc. This matters because the quality problems are rarely national. They tend to be regional, technology specific, or visible at certain times of peak hours, for example. So the compliance ranking here gives a clear comparable view of operators, their service delivery score, the percentage of tests falling below the expected service level, peak hour degradation, and their overall compliance status. Okay, I just that actually you cannot see my screen. The screen keeps loading, so I will stop sharing and maybe Salwa can share from her side.
I could see it okay. I don't know about others.
Sorry for that. Can you confirm, please, if you can see my screen now? Okay, that said, it's okay. So I was talking about the compliance ranking here and how it can give a comparable view of operators. Next, we can see a heat map that shows where underperformance is concentrated. So when an operator is acceptable at national level, it can show repeated failures in some specific region, and this is the kind of information you don't want the operator to hide. The trend chart shows whether things are getting better or worse over time for each operator. There is also an area map for regions where there is underperformance, etc. So this dashboard helped the regulator to have an evidence-based supervision of what's happening. So beyond benchmarking, the platform also can detect and investigate individual degradation events. So the goal here is not just to say that performance is bad, but to understand what kind of degradation is happening and where and how serious it is. So this process has 4 steps. First, detection. The platform continuously monitors for unusual changes like speed degradation or upload collapse. Second, there is classification. So once an anomaly is detected, the platform helps identify the likely cause. Is it an ADSL, a limitation, FTTH under delivery, etc. Third, there is a prioritization of events. So not every anomaly has the same importance. So the platform ranks the incidents by severity, number of affected users, duration, etc. In this dashboard, you can see how this anomaly detection plays out in practice. So here, for example, I present an incident of FTTH degradation in a city A, and the regulator can see the operator, the technology that has the problem, severity level, when it started, how many probes are affected in the area. The timelines show when the QoE score began to fall relative to the normal baseline, to know if this is a short-term issue, or is it like a persistent problem. The map also shows which parts of the city are affected. We can see also like a historical panel, if this is recurring or it is a new isolated event, etc. So this kind of dashboard just gives you a full picture, not just an alert, but also a context to what's happening. So far, we have shown how the platform works with Epitiro measurements alone, but Synaptique can go further. So Epitiro provides the independent user-side measurement, which tells the regulator what users received, but it does not on its own explain why a problem is happening or who is the most affected. To answer those questions, it helps to combine Epitiro's measurements with additional telecom data that adds context. For fixed broadband, this can include session data, service package information, usage volume, etc. So this adds to customer and service context that turns the measurement into an explanation. We can also have data from mobile network that can include traffic, sale and site indicators, etc. So all of this will enter the same ingestion layer, stored in the same platform, and feeds the same analytics engine. So the architecture does not change at all. It just enhances and enriches the intelligence. So let me show you what this enrichment actually produces. So here I'm just showing what Epitiro might observe, like performance degradation, like a drop in throughput, or latency spike, a weak upload figure. So this are the same indicators the operator reports, but measured from, of course, the user side. Synaptique then adds a context layer to these observations. For example, if equality drops in a region, Synaptique maybe correlates it with traffic evolution during the same period to identify whether congestion is the likely cause. If FTTH speed is below expectation, maybe Synaptique enriches this analysis with the subscriber package and the aggregation area to check whether there is systematic under delivery compared to the promised service level. If ADSL uploads weak, Synaptique adds access technology and customer segment context to quantify whether this is structural limitation affecting a specific group of users, etc. So the chain value here is clear. Epitiro measures what users receive, and Synaptique try to explain why, where, and for whom, using additional data from the operator. The final capability that I want to show is traffic and QoE correlation. So when Epitiro gives us the user side performance picture, those figures drop. The regulator knows that there is a problem, but to act on it, they need to understand the cause. Is this traffic demand issue? Is this a technology-specific failure? Is this regional pattern? So this dashboard tries to answer those questions. So the summary KPIs that I show at the top here give a quick read on the situation. Like we have total fixed traffic volumes, peak hour growth, the number of congested regions, the average performance score, and the percentage of quality incidents where degradation is correlated with high traffic. So the scatter plot, for example, it shows the traffic volume against Epitiro performance. A strong negative correlation is direct evidence of congestion-linked degradation, for example. There is also a technology mix view that shows whether the issue is concentrated over FTTH, ADSL, Wi-Fi, etc. And the congestion map shows where peak hour problems are occurring, and the station consumption patterns reveal whether demand is driven by typical usage or by a smaller number of heavy sessions. So this is the full value of the combined approach. Epitiro tells us quality dropped, Synaptique tells us why, where, when, and what to do about it. So this is what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you, everyone. I will hand the microphone to Salwa.
Just to make a statement, some people might be confused as why there is Salwa given the mic to another Salwa. Actually, there is two of us today with you, so you don't be confused. There is Salwa, our data scientist at Synaptique, and there is me, Salwa, with the W, the marketing manager. So I just want to say thank you, Salwa. Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. Actually, we had a lot of information. You shared a lot of infos with us today. We had a lot of interesting questions. I hope that we get them all answered. And like I mentioned before, if anybody does have any other question, he is welcome. I think you guys have give us an overview of how Epitiro with the Synaptic layering can help actually telecom regulators get what they had always maybe needed, the right measurements taken at the right place that can help them take the right decisions. For now, I think I'm gonna give more 4 or 5 minutes for questions. If anybody does have any other question they want to share with us, we have like 5 more minutes we can get the webinar. So your questions are welcome either for Salwa or for this.
I've had a couple of questions in the chat about the costs, and just to address those, on our website, there is, we put the base pricing for our solution, and it's, the cost of the agents is $299. We've deliberately chosen the most appropriate low-cost piece of hardware we can. And then I think it was mentioned earlier, it's a subscription service. So we charge on the basis of $15 per agent per month. So that's $180 for a year for each agent for the use, and that includes everything. So I just want to, one of the reasons we are being used by a number of smaller operators is due to the economics of the solution. So, happy to explore that. There isn't any significant capital CapEx upfront cost. So it's quite easy to get going, to start with a few agents, to create an account. And if it works for you, then you can add more. But that just covers the Epitiro side. It doesn't cover, I can't speak to the value add that Synaptique brings with their integrations. Another question was, can the tool integrate drive test logs? That's quite an involved question. There are versions that can work for cellular, but it is not typically a drive test solution using the traditional Qualcomm MDM logs that you would get from a cellular-based drive test. So that's, there's a distinction there, and I'm happy to go through that if people want to, learn a little bit more. And then I see a question from Deepal that says, does this tool support the integration of operators' QoS KPIs? I think the simple answer to that is yes. You can set any thresholds and KPI targets, and you can alert and alarm and measure against those. Okay. Are there any more questions?
I don't see any more questions in the Q&A box here.
Okay. Well, I think we've, have we run long?
Yes. So I think the webinar of the session has come to an end. There is maybe another question. Last one. Okay, is there a possibility to validate the quality of service KPIs reported by operators using the quality of experience measurements?
The simple answer is yes, if I'm understanding the question. If a carrier says, or an ISP says they're delivering a certain quality of service and these are their KPIs, with a deployment of a few agents, one could sample And if the data is consistent with theirs, then it would validate it. And if the data is inconsistent with their measurements, then one can dig deeper and try and understand why they're reporting one set of numbers and why they might be different. Often it's because there's a different methodology, and often the operators report the data in the best light possible for them. So there's usually a slight difference in the way the data is sampled. Sometimes they'll throw away the bad measurements just because they'll say, oh, that wasn't really our network, that was the user. But yes, it can be used to validate.
Okay, thank you. I think that was all we have today for the questions. I hope this session has given our participants a clear and practical picture of how independent fixed broadband quality of experience monitoring works. What does it cost? How does it work? And what became, of course, possible for regulators today. A few reminders just before we close. The recording will be shared with all the registrants, either if they had the chance to join us live today, or also for the people who couldn't join us. If, of course, you have any other question that you didn't get the chance to ask during the session, please feel free to reply to the registration communication email, or you can just send an email to us at this address. It's either for me, you can send it to me, or to this. And of course, if you would like to explore more about either Synaptique solution or Epitiro solution, we will be so happy to set a private conversation. So you can just reach out to us. On the behalf of the team of Epitiro and Synaptique, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. And thank you, of course, and thank you very much for your questions that made the session even more reactive and more informative. And we look forward to see you again at our next session. Thank you, Des, so much for joining us today. Thank you, Selwa, for joining us today too. And I think that's a wrap up for our today's session. See you again.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.